Colonel, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Same here.
And today we'll be discussing about one of the most important issues that India is facing today. All the citizens of the country, about 1.2 billion people, are having their biometrics collected by the government in the name of Aadhaar. And apparently most of the people have already enrolled themselves in this particular program. There are various issues about the Aadhaar program that we will be discussing here today. To start with, as one of the petitioners against the Aadhaar program in India, and one of the first to do it, I would want you to talk a little bit about what this program is all about and how it will impact the people of India.
Thank you. Thank you for this occasion to speak on it. It's my passion. Primarily because I believe it's a device which will totally destroy any freedom in India. And I hate to use the word Aadhaar. That itself is deceitful. Aadhaar is the name of a private trust of the first chairman of UADI. And ostensibly it was selected by a public competition, which it cannot have happened unless it was influenced. So that itself is deceitful. More importantly, the reason why I would like to resist this or ask people to resist it is that every Indian in all his or her activities is affected by this. Whether you draw pensions or salaries, scholarships, want to buy a mobile phone, an air ticket, a bus ticket, whatever a person wants to do is dependent on somebody authenticating him or her. And the citizen has no control whatsoever on this authentication. Worse, which we will come to that later, the authentication itself does not work, or the identification does not work, and the citizen has no remedy. The act itself prevents him from getting any remedy. So people must understand that this is something which will affect every facet of their life. From the time a person is born or has a child to the time he or she goes to see the maker. So it is something which will affect everything, and I am amazed why people do not know about it. They assume and think, due to government propaganda, that this is something which will fix corruption or some such thing. When we come to that, I'll show it to you how nothing can be done by this program to stop corruption. Corruption will increase because people become vulnerable under the hands of government and petty bureaucrats. So this is what I would like people to know about, and that is what I would like to speak about.
Obviously, it's an extremely dangerous program.
Absolutely.
And the state is, in a way, kind of, ensuring that people are obedient, and they're forcing obedience on people. And as you very clearly said, the name Aadhaar itself is very ironic. Aadhaar means the proof, which means that citizens have to prove their own identity, as if they were not born here, as if they did not have any other identity or identity cards on them. And so that's just not the irony. I mean, there seems to be a much larger plot that is emerging very clearly. Now, I mean, one of the major things about this particular program is, Aadhaar is dependent on the collection of biometric data from people. Fingerprints of all the 1.2 billion people, including fingerprints and iris scans of newborn babies, are being collected, by the government of India for this Aadhaar program. Why do you think that this biometric enumeration or the collection of people's personal data is being done by the government?
Yeah, first of all, Aadhaar does not mean proof alone. The translation, it is translated in various ways. It's a Sanskrit word which has come into Indian languages, and it's translated in or meant differently in different Indian languages. For example, in Malayalam it's called Aadharam, which means document which forms the basis of your title. So Aadhaar actually means foundation or basis. Now they use biometrics as the foundation or basis, which itself is extremely foolish, and it's actually unscientific and stupid. It's not my opinion. Now the biometrics are fingerprints and iris. Now these, although by cop shows or spy thrillers, people have come to think of it as foolproof identification, no engineer or scientist will claim so. And it's not Mathew Thomas saying that. It has been said in an article in The Economist in October 2010. In 2010, 4 national academies of the United States published a report called Biometric Recognition, Challenges and Opportunities. And this was a joint research by those academies, the National Academy of Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, the Institute of Medicine, and the National Research Council. The research project had collaboration from the intelligence agencies of USA, from the Defense Department, from Homeland Security, and a few of the top IT companies like IBM, HP, and so on. Now they concluded, the first sentence in their conclusion is that biometric recognition is inherently probabilistic and hence inherently fallible. Since this video I hope will be addressed to the larger lay audience, I'd like to explain that in a few words. See, if we think that biometrics can identify a criminal from a biometrics taken at a crime scene. That is true. The reason is, there you're comparing the biometrics with those of a few known suspects, and it is collaborative evidence. It is like taking one photograph, and if I mix it with 10 photographs of your friends and I ask you to identify that particular friend, you may be able to do it in 5 or 10 minutes. If I mix that photograph with, say, 100, you may take 15 minutes. If I mix it with 1,000 or 10,000, you'll find it difficult. If I mix it with 1,000,000 photographs, you'll find it virtually impossible to identify your friend in those 1,000,000 photographs. It is probabilistic. If you happen to pick that up after the 78th photograph, you may be able to identify it. The same applies to a computer. Although it can work much faster than the human mind, it doesn't have the ability of a fuzzy logic of the human brain. So the computer makes mistake, and those who understand how the biometric image is captured and converted into a binary string through an algorithm will understand how the computer can make mistakes. And it's virtually impossible to identify a person by looking at an entire database of other biometric images. So the biometrics as such it doesn't work at all, and this has been admitted in the counter affidavit of UADI to my writ in the Supreme Court, where they said that 80 million duplicates or fakes have been detected. Now this was 80 million. This was at a time when about 800 million people had been enrolled. That means every 10th person has enrolled twice. And they use the word fake. So again in RTI I asked them, how many fakes and how many duplicates? It's interesting that they were not able to even differentiate which is a fake and which is a duplicate. So this is the reason why the statement was made is due to ignorance. The ignorance is that in biometrics, or in biometric identification and recognition, there is a thing called false positive matches, and that is where one person's biometrics matches that of another. And this has to be resolved by physical verification. There is no other way to do that. Now in 1.2 billion people, how will you do physical verification? It's impossible. So they did not do that, and every false match, they simply said it is a duplicate. And interestingly, they said, when I again asked them in RTA, they deleted the enrollment which was of a later date. For all I know, the first one could be a fake, and the second one could be genuine. So there's no way in which they can do that. Biometrics simply does not work in such large populations.
So you're basing your discussions not on assumptions, but actual right to information that you've got from the right to information requests.
Yes.
And from what you're saying, it's all a mess. I mean, if there are 1 billion people who have enrolled, and at least 1/10 of them would be having more than one ID card, then they will definitely misuse it.
Let me tell you something. First of all, there's no card, and that is part of the deceit. If you go to the UID's website, they talk of it as a number. They are not issuing any card. In fact, in one of the RTI replies to me, they started printing these ID cards. And they did that because people were clamoring for an ID card. Then they realized that if they print cards and issue it to people, then the whole biometric edifice collapses. Because the basis of the system is that wherever you go, you could biometrically identify yourself. Now, if you have a card, who will use biometrics? And the reason is not because biometrics is more accurate. For every biometric transaction, the companies who are giving this technology, licensed technology, are paid 2.75 rupees. Therefore, you cannot have a card. If you have a card, biometrics will not be used. If biometrics is not used, the contractor doesn't make money. So they cancel the print order.
Let me just ask this for my own clarification. You're saying that every transaction that happens through Aadhaar, where people have to put their fingers on a machine.
Identification or authentication.
So this authentication is done through a provider, a private provider, who is paid by the government of India.
Yes. It is known as the Automatic Biometric Identification System, ABIS. Now this is a licensed software hardware combination which is provided to these agencies which do the identification or authentication. For example, a machine would be kept in a bank. You go to the bank and you either you want to open a bank account. So the bank manager will tell you, have you got this so-called Aadhaar card, the number? So you give him the 12-digit number, and then he keys in that 12-digit number. Then you give him on a scanner your biometrics. This is then sent to a database, the UID or the CIDR database, and a query is sent there, and it has to return the answer saying, yes, this person has this number and this is his biometrics. Now that is controlled by this foreign company. So when you open a bank account and you're identified, the company gets paid. When you want to do a transaction and you're identified, they get paid. So there's a huge amount of money which that company collects for a faulty system. This is scientifically not practicable, and mathematically, one of my friends, Dr. Hans Matthews, he has calculated using the error rates published by UIDI. He has calculated that in laboratory conditions, if you take these biometrics and authentication is done also under laboratory conditions. When I mean laboratory conditions, clean your hands nicely and have put it properly on the scanner and so on. If you do that, you will have, when you reach the last 100 million out of 1.2 billion, you will have 1 in 100 false matches, mathematically using probability theory. Under field conditions, he has said it will be 6 times more, that is 1 in 16. And actually we have found it is 1 in 10. If you have 1 in 10 false matches, how will you use it for any purpose at all? So what the UIDA is now doing is, they are simply trying to allocate this number, and they are not going to use biometrics at all. For example, in LPG, the task force headed by Mr. Nilangani had recommended that you should have a last mile delivery point authentication. Now they stopped doing it when they did the experiments in Mysore and Tumkur and found it doesn't work. In one dealer whom I met, they had 300 domestic servants or domestic workers, domestic helps, who had this Aadhaar, and they tried to use it for delivery of cylinders to whether authentication can be done. Not one of those ladies, their biometrics could be authenticated. So it just doesn't work at all. And mathematically, scientifically, it's proven. What beats me is, how is it that the government of India hopes to do something which is scientifically and mathematically impossible?
Yeah, no, I think we'll come to this to the plot, as you may want to call it.
Yeah.
But then, even to force people to let go of their personal data,
Yeah.
like the fingerprints and the iris scan, is an extremely invasive and an intrusive way
Yes,
of getting people to identify themselves.
Yes.
I mean, it's not happened in many parts of the world, I believe.
Yeah.
And what do you think about this invasiveness of the state into the personal? It's not even a person, it's so private.
It is like full body scan at airports.
Yeah, it's except that this is going to be digitized. And the full body scan is at least a scan, and the person passes through.
Yeah.
We can of course be judgmental about it, but here, these scans are actually digitized and kept forever.
Yes, yes. In fact, I will, instead of my answering that question, I'll put it in the words of the present British Prime Minister, Theresa May, when she moved the bill in Parliament to scrap the National ID Card Act in USA. She used the word that this is intrusive bullying.
UK, you mean?
In UK.
Yeah.
It is intrusive bullying, that's what she said. And she said it's an assault on personal liberties. So you are absolutely right, it is invasive, and the correct word is intrusive bullying. You have got a bunch of bullies who are trying to compel you to behave in a certain fashion. If you are told tomorrow that your bank account will be blocked, or you can't get a mobile phone, or your child can't get a scholarship, or your wife can't be admitted to hospital, you'll do anything. So this is the digital emergency which has invaded our physical bodies, and for no purpose at all. Nothing will be achieved. This is exactly what it is. And worse, there is an admission in the so-called Targeted Deliveries Act. In Section 5 of the Act, it exempts people whose biometrics cannot be captured. And who are these people? It starts with women, children, senior citizens, unskilled, unorganized workers, disabled people, and nomadic tribes, and homeless.
That would be 75% of the population.
More than 75. Women itself around 45 or 48%. Then you take unskilled workers, non-women unskilled workers. Then you take homeless. It's a huge number. I think it will be over 75-80%. If something doesn't work for 75 or 80% of the people, and you are saying that it is meant for those people who did not so-called have an identity, why are you doing this at all?
Yeah, that's a question that we need to dwell more upon.
Yeah.
Very clearly, as you said, it is very invasive, and many countries around the world, the so-called developed countries, have very clearly rejected it.
Yes.
They have said that it is intrusive bullying, and the UK has done it. And even in a lot of other countries, there are social security numbers, but these numbers are not based on extraction of private information about individuals.
Yes.
So there's something about Aadhaar which makes it extremely illegal in a manner. In spite of the fact that the court, the Supreme Court, which is hearing the case, and on the issue of whether privacy is fundamental in India or not. Now, in spite of that, the very mention of how intrusive it is makes it in a way very disturbing. It's Orwellian, to profile the entire population of a country.
Yes, you're right. Countries which wanted to do it have given it up, or are on the way of giving it up. For example, Australia tried for a long time, almost 20 years, 1986 to today, they tried passing what is known as an act to issue Australia card. It was called the Australia card. After some time they tried to use it for income tax. In around 2006 they stopped it because it didn't either prevent income tax fraud or money laundering or any such thing. And it did not have any biometrics. USA passed in 2006 the Real ID Act. And, Mr. Bush was the president, and that is where this use of the comparison with SSN is also fraudulent. SSN has a history of from 1934. It was meant to give dole to people who are unemployed, and it has nothing to do with biometrics or surveillance of this type. So after 2011, as we are moving towards the what you call 2001, the towers, the bombing and so on, after terrorism increased, Bush passed what is known as the Real ID Act, where he wanted to incorporate biometrics into driving licenses. That was passed in 2006. Till today, it has not been implemented. And they have now postponed it to 2018. I don't think it will ever be implemented because the states don't want it and they know it doesn't work. But when you travel there, they'll take your biometrics. It's just stored. It's kept there probably for future use. They just capture all data. But here it is total assault on liberties, on control of the population, of forcing you to do anything, and it's completely invasive.
Is there any other country which has a similar program?
Yes. We are following our arch enemy, Pakistan. And it's interesting that Pakistan and India are the only two countries which are doing this, and they are doing it using the same US and French companies. These companies are linked to their respective defense departments and intelligence agencies. Pakistan started it in 2009 and India in 2010. The Pakistan chief, Tariq Malik, was awarded at a biometric conference in Milan in 2009, and Mr. Nilangani received the same award in 2010. So these are the only two countries doing it. And imagine, the same companies have the data of Pakistan and India. Imagine, I mean, we'll come to the security aspects later on, but as far as biometric identification and sending up a central database linked to every other database, your emails, your mobile phone, your ration card, your passport, your salaries, the place of employment, everything is linked to that. And only two countries are doing that, Pakistan and India. Now they are trying to come into Bangladesh, Nigeria, all the countries which are maybe lower in terms of developed democratic norms.
I have the last question. For this discussion. We will continue this again later, because there is a lot that we should be discussing and informing the people about Aadhaar. This question is about does it work? I mean, you spoke about the probabilities and certain scientific studies done across the world. But the government of India is still insisting on Aadhaar. It is. I mean, I personally believe that they are almost accusing the citizens of India as people who rob and thieve the government. And so it is looking at the entire population of India as suspects in a certain crime of a grand scale, rather than as citizens with rights.
You are absolutely right. You asked me the question, does it work? Now, the counter to that is, work where? In what? To achieve what objective? They claim it is for targeting services. They claim it is for eliminating fakes and ghosts in government databases, which they claim is the method through which subsidies and welfare benefits are siphoned out. And the claim is that in the case of LPG, they have said 40,000 crores, 45,000 crores are being siphoned out annually. Now, this is a statement they have made in the counter affidavit. And therefore they say that it will be put into the, they'll eliminate the fakes and ghosts, and they will cash transfer the subsidies into banks. Similarly, in ration cards, they say that they will issue biometric ration cards, and every ration shop will have a scanner, so they will stop the siphoning of subsidies. So the question whether it will work. Now let's take LPG. First of all, authentication, biometric authentication has been given up. Secondly, in RTI replies to me by IOC, they said they have not found any fake LPG connection.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have said they got duplicate connections when customers voluntarily linked their Aadhaar number with their customer number. And I had asked them, it's very simple to know whether LPG is being siphoned out if you just look at the pattern of consumption. An average household will consume a cylinder probably in a month or a month and a half. If I asked them, have you got data on how many connections are consuming more than 3 cylinders a month? They have said we have not done any such analysis. So the question which I asked the government is, if you say that huge amounts of subsidies are lost, and they use the word leakage instead of stolen or pilferage, which is what it actually is. If so much amount of money is being stolen, have you done any investigation? There's not a single government, state or center, of any department which has done an investigation to find out the criminals who are siphoning it out. A year ago, I think, one of the MLAs in UP, or MP or MLA in UP, was caught transporting 2,000 tons of rice in a goods train, smuggled rice. This is PDS rice. Now, how will this biometric scanners, etc., work or identify these people? And the fact remains that the government is assuming that every Indian is a potential criminal or a criminal. They are intent on siphoning out subsidies. And they are actually speaking, this is a diversion from the real criminals into the innocent citizens of India. The diversion is, actually speaking, I believe all subsidies are siphoned out in bulk from either storages written off as damaged, or you prepare. After all, if there are fakes and ghosts in the government database, some government official is preparing it. Then another government official, or he or she herself, will have to enter it into the government database. So it's a government official who's creating these fakes and ghosts. And he or she must be doing it under direction from somewhere else. Why aren't they not investigating that? Why are they trying to identify and say, by identification we'll catch the criminal? You can't. You are assuming that every Indian is a criminal. Whereas, as we know, all the criminals, the majority of the big criminals are all political people. If you look at the Association of Democratic Reforms, research work which comes out, or reports which come out, 1 in 4 MPs have got a criminal record. Every 4th MP. And the same goes for the state legislatures. Now, who is siphoning this or stealing this welfare subsidies? I believe it must be some politicians or their cronies or somewhere else. A poor person finds it difficult to obtain a ration card. How will he create fake ration cards by the dozen and try and siphon out rations? It doesn't go there. And lastly, even if you, first of all, for crediting the LPG subsidy into a bank account, you don't need an Aadhaar number. All that you need is a customer number. Or the person can give his bank account number to the oil company. And even if you put it there into the bank, nothing stops for the LPG customer from using it in his auto rickshaw or on his wayside restaurant or anywhere, or giving it to a hotel which can use that. So by putting money into a bank account, you cannot stop pilferage of LPG subsidies. And I found in the Supreme Court canteen, in the Parliament canteen, in Bescom's canteen, domestic cylinders are being used, LPG cylinders. When I asked the oil companies, how are you allowing them to use this? They said there's a special category of exempt customers, and these people come under that category. So I asked them, what is the consumption of those people? They said, that's confidential information, we can't give you. So if you are supplying, say, 10,000 cylinders or 2,000 cylinders to these canteens a month, you can write off another 20,000 because there's no record of where it is going.
So finally they're making themselves immune to the crime that they commit.
Yes, yes.
But they're beating the entire population of India into submission. And let's talk more about this, when we sit next. For now, I'm really thankful that we started this initiative.
Therefore, this diversion, it's very interesting. There must be some other hidden agenda in doing this. Because I believe that those who are doing this are more intelligent than us, and they know it cannot work. So why are they doing it? That motivation is, we should see, in the next session.
Sure. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you.